I had very much a turbulent experience with dating when I was in my young 20s. I call it my young 20s and my old 20s. I'm in my old 20s now. I'm 29, and young 20 Dawn, I would say, didn't have a good time. I like to think, looking back on it, that I did, but realistically, when you're in your young 20s, you don't know what the fuck's going on. I think choices definitely make us indecisive, even when you're in a long-term relationship. I know people that have said to me, you always wonder if there's someone better, and you'd go straight back on the apps, like straight back on it. It was like an addiction. And you'd be like, swipe. And so I'm going to have osteoarthritis in my fucking thumb when I'm older, I swear. And from all this typing as well. Hello, I'm back. It's Dawn, your host. God. I made a lot of dating mistakes when I was younger, and I kind of wish I'd had this dating advice when I was younger, / I wish I'd listened to it if I had it. And maybe I did. And I think I did have some of it. But I just didn't listen to it. And I'm going to explain what that advice was and why I didn't listen to it. Because I wasted a lot of time, made myself very upset, questioned a lot of my self-worth. And I read this article recently that was basically like 5 signs you should take a break from dating. Obviously, I'm not dating now, but when I was reading it, I was like, damn, that was, that could have been useful for me aged 24, 23, 24, 25, however old I was. I did a lot of dating when I was that age and made a lot of mistakes. So some of those are talked about in some of my earlier podcast episodes, but mainly I just wanted to focus today on some like really specific mistakes that I made rather than like necessarily any like stories, because I did talk about it was in like Tinder, the good, the bad, the ugly episodes. So if you want to go listen to those, it is probably a bit more like detailed. This is more like advice I wish I'd listened to. I probably should have taken a break from dating, but I didn't. I ploughed on through. I was like, no, let's go. We're doing it. We're going. We're making the same mistakes over and over again. Classic. So, I think I've got a fucking cactus splinter in my finger. One of the first comments that this article says is, dating should be fun, light you up, and be exciting. I had very much a turbulent experience with dating when I was in my young 20s. I call it my young 20s and my old 20s. I'm in my old 20s now. I'm 29, and young 20 Dawn, I would say, didn't have a good time. I like to think, looking back on it, that I did. But realistically, when you're in your young 20s, you don't know what the fuck's going on. And actually, you're very poor unless you're like a nepo baby and you've got loads of money, but then you've got your like parents to like live up to, and they might be making you feel shit because I don't know, they're successful and you feel like you have to follow in their footsteps. I don't know, I've not had that, I'm not a nepo baby, so I don't know. If you don't know what a nepo baby is, then where have you been the last 10 years? Nepo baby is basically where you're born into wealth and then you're like a wealthy person by birth, and then you're like, you get all the success of wealth without having had to work for it. So that's a lot of people I particularly came across that phrase when I was looking at going into acting, and then I realised that most people that are in acting that are good, like high level actors, are actually nepo babies. And I was like, I'm not going to make it like anywhere because I have no connections and I'm older, and I just didn't see it as being possible. Obviously it is. I always forget to turn off my my sound on my computer, and then my emails come through. So I would say that it didn't excite me, or it did, but I think in a bad way, like a bad kind of excitement. Like, I'm going to get into like why I think it sort of negatively excited me a bit later, but I don't think it lit me up. Lit me up is like not a phrase that was ever in my repertoire when I was dating. I think fun, maybe. Like, I did have some really fun dates sometimes, and I did have some experiences which were just fun to talk about, you know, and maybe I won't repeat fully in detail on here, but they were definitely fun. They didn't go anywhere though. That's the problem. When a date is fun, like, I don't feel like it's going anywhere. You're not going to be in a relationship with that person. That, you know, your experience of fun might be different to mine. I'm like, yeah, okay, you might have a fun time, as in like, yeah, I had a really nice time. But like, I'm talking about like fun, crazy fun. Like the kind of fun where you're like, I don't know, jumping over walls and like doing crazy shit. Like, crazy shit kind of fun has never for me ended in a long-term relationship, I don't think. I would say I did regularly feel emotionally exhausted from the ups and downs of dating. That's another phrase that comes from that what's it called? Article. Oh my god, I'm like half awake today, I swear. That's another phrase that comes from that article. And it basically says, if you're constantly emotionally exhausted, you should take a break. And I think I was, you know, but I didn't. And I was like, yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep trying to find somebody. And I personally think, I'm going to go into why now, okay? I'm going to say, I personally think, firstly, my mum was never like alone. She was always in a relationship when I was growing up. And if she was alone, she was sad about it. So I had that like constant feedback that it was not good to be alone for whatever reason, you know, whether that's like loneliness or financial issues, or whether that's, you know, lacking self-worth because you're like, well, nobody loves me. I'm not saying that that necessarily applied to my mum, but like, I'm saying that those are some of the reasons why you might not want to be alone. And I definitely absorbed that as a kid. I was like, I don't think consciously though. Like, it wasn't a conscious decision, because I'm thinking about it now and I'm not, you know, in my head I'm like, you know, it's probably a good thing to be able to be alone. But when I was dating, I was constantly like striving to be with somebody. I was like, I don't want to be alone. And there were a few reasons for that. I think often I felt like left behind, especially if your friends are not single. They often spend a lot of time with their like other half, and you're sort of left behind, and you're like, well, okay, well, I'm alone. Nobody loves me, nobody wants me. And maybe that's a self-worth thing, you know? I'm being pretty candid here, I suppose. But like, maybe that is a self-worth thing, and it's like, I didn't respect myself, so how is anybody else going to respect me? But like, how, you know, if I didn't respect myself, how was I going to find somebody? And how was I going to find somebody who respected me? Because you're going to go for people that just treat you like whatever, because you want anybody, you want anything. And it literally says that you lose sight of what you want from a relationship and repeatedly attract the wrong partners. And I think I definitely did that. So feeling alone and left behind was definitely a thing. Not that everybody in my young 20s was in a relationship, like far from it, I would say. Actually, no, because I always felt like everybody was. But then all the people I lived with 4 guys, and all of them are single at the point of entry. Oh no, they weren't. One of them wasn't, and then became single. And then the opposite way round for the other one. But like, I think another thing was, I always felt like I'm getting older and I should have somebody by the time I'm like 25, so that I can like have, you know, I'm not like at the age of 30 and then I'm like, oh my god, I have to have kids with this person, right? So I guess some of it is biological clock as well. I was a bit like, you know, I was like 23 though. It's not, or no, I was younger. 22? Yeah, I was like 22. But I was like constantly like, we're fed this like biological clock, like you need to hurry up and find somebody. And I guess we're still very much, you know, the generation who found the one, in inverted commas, because you could argue they weren't the one, aged like 15, they're still alive. They are our grandparents, and soon that they will, you know, be gone. And we will be the age of, eventually, of grandparents where we didn't find the one until we were like 25 or 30. And then that will become the norm. And then I wonder what will happen from there. Like, will it be, people will be like, oh, we didn't find the one till we're 40 or something like that. Because I think people will just end up putting off kids later and later, as late as they can. But I think we'll have to find a way to like sort out that baby situation. Because I think the thing is, I don't think it's a good idea for people to be having kids at like, if a woman is like 50, because when you're older as their child, you're then looking after them at a younger age. That's just my thoughts anyway, from what I've seen of like people who had to look after their parents. Especially as now I'm nearly 30 and my dad is 80. So it's like, for me, that's like such a big difference. And I don't necessarily, entering my 30s, I'm like, I don't really want to, I'm still sort of living my life, jumping about, and then you've got elderly parents to look after, and 80 isn't that old anymore, but depends who it is. Let's put it that way. I think I basically did the same thing over and over again. I think that was really frustrating for my friends to watch. I basically dated guys that had commitment issues, dated guys who would fuck me over, dated guys who were not right for me whatsoever. And I did it because they made me feel excited in a, like, not like a sexual way, but like in a kind of chasey kind of way. And I think the biggest problem was that I was always going for the wrong guys. I had an attraction to people in the military, and I think it's I think there's multiple reasons. Like, I don't know, do I want to go into significant detail here? I mean, we're always, in some way or another, we're probably striving to find someone who's like if you're a female, like your dad, and if you're a male, like your mum, right? And my dad was in the military, so it's like, does that play a part in it? Maybe. And then you're just, the military men are notoriously quite non-committal, and I'm not saying that about all of them, but most of them that I've experienced are. And some of the ones that maybe weren't on the dating apps, maybe they were already married or something, or they were still married but on the dating apps. I did come across one of those, but apparently his wife was like fine with it. So I was like, I didn't meet him actually. I'd like to point that out, but apparently his wife knew that he was on dating apps, and I don't know whether it was like a threesome situation. I'd never found out, thankfully. I don't really want to be getting involved in somebody's like marriage. So yeah, anyway, guys in the military I found were just so like non-committal, but they're also kind of they're you chase them, right? And I think I kind of had this dopamine attraction where I was like, let's chase them, but maybe not like consciously. Again, so much of it is subconscious. I was just like, chase, and then I would, you'd come off a date and then straight away you would be like, either not bothered, I'm not bothered, right? And you'd go straight back on the apps, like straight back on it. It was like an addiction. And you'd be like, swipe. I'm going to have osteoarthritis in my fucking thumb when I'm older, I swear. And from all this typing as well. And I think that's not a good sign. You're like constantly like, what next? That, or like, they're not good enough, what next? Or like, I've got so many choices, what next? And also it's like this dopamine, like, ping, 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 like in your brain, and you need more of it, and you're addicted, and you're like, I need more. And then, or you would be so fucking in love, feel like you're in love, not love, feel like you are so in love with this person you just met because they've got some kind of je ne sais quoi. I don't know quite what that means, but I think it's the right phrase. Je ne sais quoi is like a kind of intangible quality, I think. I'm always surprised when I blow my nose and then it comes out clear, and I'm like, it doesn't feel like it's going to be clear. And I'm often surprised, as I was just then. So yeah, you would end up getting this like overwhelming feeling of like, they are the one. I don't want to ever let them go. And the reason you get that feeling is because you're like, because they make you feel a certain way, and they give you a kind of like, I'm interested, and like, I'm selling you the dream, but I'm also pushing away, and that's what's making you attracted to me. And I had that a couple of times in particular, and I've said here, if it's too good to be true, it is, because I don't want to say fell in love, because it's like, it's not true. I didn't fall in love with this guy, but I was like kind of obsessed with him. And if it's too good to be true, it is, right? So I was like obsessed with him, and I talked about it in more detail in the Tinder the Bad episode. So go listen to that one if you fancy. And I also had another guy who I think I also talked about that in the Bad. So I call him the catfish guy. He basically pretended he was like a doctor, but he was really like attractive in inverted commas because his picture, he'd like chosen some kind of crazy picture. But like, I never met him because he basically ghosted me, and he was obviously a catfish. I don't really get why people do that. I guess, again, the thrill or something like that. But if it's too good to be true, it is. That is my advice. Like, with this other, I had a very skeptical view of dating. I was like, right, if he is telling me, whatever he's telling me, it's probably a lie. And I took a very like standoffish stance, and I was like, okay, Dawn, if you're feeling like completely enamored by somebody, it's probably too good to be true. It's a lie. Stay away from it. They're trying to trick you with their tricks. And whilst that's true to a certain extent, I don't want people to think like, oh my God, I had a really good date, that means they're a liar. Like, no, not necessarily. But if you get like extreme feelings of love/lust for somebody after a first date, like, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. Maybe back in the day, do you know what? Back in the day, like grandparents' age, maybe that was fine because you would get that feeling and then the guy would actually follow through. Like, you would get married and shit. Whereas, like, nowadays they kind of go, oh, well, I've got plenty more options. There's plenty more fish in the sea, so I'll just go find somebody else. Or they kind of trick you. I don't know. I had a lot of guys trick me or feel like they were tricking me. Some guys didn't. Do you know what? Some guys were really upfront and they were like, I don't want anything more than just like casual stuff. And it's like, okay, thank you for telling me that. Like, but some people would try and sell you themselves and try and sell you the dream, and that was really hard to learn because I'd come from a place where like I hadn't used dating apps before, and if a guy was interested in me, I was like, okay, they're interested in me, and that was kind of it. It wasn't like games and shit like that. So the next piece of advice is basically, if it negatively impacts your self-worth or self-esteem, you need to have a break. And I was like, there were so many times where I just jumped straight back on the bandwagon because I was like, I can't take a break. Because you feel so shit at the time, you're like, I need something to bounce me back. I need something to rebound me catapult me back into happiness. So I was like, right, let's just go straight back onto the dating apps and find the next one. And it was like this constant like game of cat and mouse, like chasing after them, or the opposite way around. You know, I'm sure there were people chasing after me, and I was like, no. And it's a horrible game. It really is. Like, and I think what I realised, and this is like my biggest thing, is I realised that you shouldn't feel like, ooh, no, I don't want to be involved in this person whatsoever. And on the other end of the spectrum, you shouldn't feel like, oh my God, this person is the one, I'm going to marry them. But middle, perfect. If you don't feel like, if you don't hate them, but you don't like necessarily love them, that's a great place to start. Like, that is a great place to start. It doesn't mean it's going to like necessarily work out, but I would say, you know, as long as you're not like, ew, I've got the ick, or you're not like, oh my god, this person is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Because as soon as you think they're the best person that's ever happened to you, they're going to treat you as if they are the best thing that's ever happened to you, and they're going to know it as well. And maybe I've got a really cynical view of guys. I get that. I get it. But like, some of the guys I met on dating apps were absolute monsters. I was like, you know, they would just like play you along, and it's like they would know that they had you wrapped around your little finger and their little finger, and if you had no self-worth or self-value, you would go along with that. And that is how you enter into what I would call a toxic relationship. And to be fair, it never got that far, because they were just so non-committal that they would either ghost, or, you know, you basically don't have sex with them and then they ghost you, and you're like, okay, well, that's clearly all you wanted, even though you told me that you didn't want that. You wanted like something more than just sex. And it's like, don't lie. It's not getting you anywhere. Like, I really don't get it. Like, just don't lie. Like, you didn't have sex. So where did that get you? I think choices definitely make us like indecisive, even when you're in a long-term relationship. I know people that have said to me, you know, you always wonder if there's someone better, and you have to kind of get out of that mindset. And it's like, so what if there's someone better? Like, doesn't mean you'll necessarily find them. And also, we always think the grass is greener on the other side, because you can't see the weeds from here. And then as soon as you get to know that person, you find out their skeletons, you know, you find out their weeds, and you go, okay, well, I didn't know that before. Because there have been some people that are really charismatic and really like, ooh, like kind of cool and elusive. But then when you hear like things that people say about them, you're like, let's say I say to somebody, oh, that person's really like suave. And you'll be like, and then they'll say, yeah, but that's just a front. As in, they know something that I don't. And you'll be like, oh. And then you realise that everyone's just putting on a front. Like, until you really know somebody, until you like really delve in and get to know somebody, what they show you on the surface means nothing. So just bear that in mind. So I do think whilst choices make us indecisive and we always think there's going to be someone better, I think you just have to be happy with the situation you've got and stop chasing something new and stop chasing something you think will be better. Because often I have thought like, oh, I wonder what it would be like if I was with that person instead. But then you have to really look at them and think, what are they hiding? And they're not purposely hiding it. They are putting on a socially acceptable front. They're putting on a front where they're like, you know, I'm putting across my best self. I'm not going to have a fucking breakdown in the middle of the hospital. Like, but behind closed doors, people will do that. And that's when you know people, that's what you see. And it always feels like, oh my God, my relationship's kind of difficult. But it's like, that is a relationship. That is human. And unless you never delve into that like depth of relationship, then you're never going to know somebody like that. And you're always going to know somebody as their like outer side, you know, their outer ego. I know it sounds like I'm saying alter ego. I'm not. Their outer persona is what I'm trying to say. I've also put this. These are some of my additional tips on the end. Red flags are red flags, right? If your gut says no, it's probably right. Stop ignoring them. And that's much easier to do when you don't know somebody so well and they give you red flags to start with and you're like, oh, fuck, okay, where did this come from? But when you're deeper into a relationship, you have to kind of weigh up how much a red flag is a red flag, and that becomes more difficult, and I get that. But at the start, I remember some people giving me some real red flags to like. So I went and met with somebody. Again, this is all on Tinder, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I I met up with somebody, and like straight after I left, he was like messaging me like, come back. And I was like, this is really weird. And I was like, no. So red flag. I've also had people like tell me their medical conditions on first dates, and I've just been like, you didn't need to tell me that, but thanks for the disclosure. But also, it doesn't make me more attracted to you now that I know your medical conditions. Like, why would you tell me that? That was a red flag. Also, people saying things like, when it's kind of disingenuous, I think you need to try and learn like when it is disingenuous. Like, I don't want anybody else, and like, I'm like looking for a long-term thing, or like I'm not just looking for a shag. Like, some people, when they say that, are being realistic, like they're being true. But I have had people say that and literally not mean it whatsoever. And I don't know why they say it. Like, why? Write it down in the comments down below. Why do people lie? For sex? Well, you can still get sex if you don't lie. So like, what's going on here? To be honest, guys, I think that's it. Like, I think those are my big bits of advice. Should I just go through them quickly? I'll give you a little summary. Dating should be fun. If it's not, what are you doing? You need a break if you're constantly feeling emotionally exhausted. You need to decide what you want. What do you want? And that will help you. You need to decide what you want so that you don't lose sight of what you want from a relationship and repeatedly attract the wrong partners, i.e. people who are going to fuck you over, people who are going to give you, what's it called? Like separation, like anxiety. I don't want to call it that. Abandonment issues, that's what I wanted to call it. If it's too good to be true, it is. If it negatively impacts your self-worth or self-esteem, stop. Because that's what's important. You need to maintain your own self-worth, self-esteem, self-love. Like, I know that sounds really fucking cringy, but it's so true. And red flags are red flags. Choices make us indecisive. We always think there's be somebody better, but there's not necessarily somebody better. They're just hiding their true colours. And you have to accept that your relationships will be difficult. Recognise where the urge to find someone is coming from. Is it a learned behaviour? Is it your self-worth? Is it panic? Biological clock? And dating apps are addictive / dopamine inducing. So I think we all knew that. But like, why are you seeking somebody? Is it because you're seeking the dopamine? You're seeking the chase? Like, maybe try and just take a step back from that and just reevaluate the situation. And it's really hard when you're in that like cycle of, I need to find someone, you're like, ah. And I don't know, would it be any different now if I started dating again? Like, I don't know. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening. I'm sorry the start of the episode was a little bit like clunky. It felt clunky to me. That's because I hadn't warmed up. I'm warm now. My match has sunk in. I'm going to go do some hot yoga in my living room. Whoa. Plot twist. Anyway, I hope you guys have learned something a little bit or related to it or something. Had a good time. I upload twice a week, usually Mondays and Thursdays, sometimes a little bit late because I'm disorganized or running low on time. And I talk about, all things, I guess, like lifestyle, health, well-being. And I think I wanted to do one on ashwagandha, but then I like to research it properly, so I didn't want to like start it and not really know what was going on. So that will probably be the next episode. So subscribe, follow, give it a 5-star rating, whatever, like it, etc. Comment down below, stuff like that. Share it with your friends. I don't know. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, and I will see you on Friday, next episode, whenever you're listening. Bye.